Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for championship weekend. We are one game away from the Super Bowl. By the end of this weekend, the AFC, the best of the best, will have faced each other in that conference, and only one team will come out of it crowned the champions of the AFC, and in the NFC, same deal. So, very exciting weekend. No small feat to make it this far. Congratulations to all four franchises. Congratulations to all four fan bases. Very exciting weekend for you guys. And I truly wish all of you the best of luck. I'm really not rooting against anybody. If anything, Kansas City, you've been there and done it the most recently. So you're the least high up on my radar, but still plenty of guys, especially on your defense, that I like quite a bit. So, I'll let the cat out of the bag here. At the end of the day, since about, 2/3 of the way through the season or so, started getting the questions, who do you think is going to, be in the Super Bowl? Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? And the first answer that I've had, and I've stuck with it throughout the entirety until now, has been San Francisco versus Baltimore. So it's no different. That's all you're here for. There's my prediction. I think that San Francisco and Baltimore will end up meeting each other in the Super Bowl. Do think that they are the two best teams really in the NFL this year without too much of a doubt. So, that's that. I will get to more about each of those games and where I think each of these teams can find some ways to beat each other. But first of all, let's do just a little bit of fun, some DFS betting here. And here's the lineup that I've made that I will enter in. And it starts off with Brock Purdy at quarterback, followed by Gus Edwards, Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the running games here. At the end of the day, it was a hard time for me to fill this second running back spot, especially. And I had to go real cheap here at one of these wide receiver spots. But I really like a lot of everybody else on the roster here. So we got Ayuk to match up with Purdy and George Kittle to match up with that as well. Then we've got Jameson Williams here. I don't know why I clicked on him. Hoping for, a big play. I think that they will be behind in this game, so I think that shot will be taken at some point, whether it be the first play of the game or the last play of the game, or maybe both of those. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, hoping for the best there. San Francisco doesn't have the best passing defense, so I think there will be opportunities for him to at least rack up some receptions, which can go a long ways. Then we've got Travis Kelce in at tight end here, hoping for a big day from him. If they're going to beat Baltimore, that would definitely be, I think, the best, most logical path to beating Baltimore. A lot of it would go through Travis Kelce. And then the Ravens defense at the end of the day, I don't think that's necessarily what's going to happen. So, I'm hoping for the best here. I just wanted some good players and then had to smash in a couple of other spots. So we'll enter that in. Here were the results from last week's lineup. I forgot to enter this into a smaller tournament, so I don't know quite how it would have fared. But as you can see, it did really good with some of the main pieces of this. And James Cook, George Kittle did all right here. But when it came to all the other pieces, Justice Hill, too, for the price, I think came through just fine. It was really right here at the wide receiver spot. And this DST that I ended up really killing myself, not giving myself much of a chance. So I think I was on the right path here with my three core pieces. I just didn't fill out the rest of the roster well enough. So worthy attempt, and was something for you to build off of if you had so wanted to. Now let's get on to this week, the spreads, the over-unders, the money line. You already know my money line betting. I'm thinking Baltimore against Kansas City, and I'm thinking San Francisco against Detroit. Now I looked at a few of the numbers for these teams. First of all, all four teams are top 10 rushing offenses when it comes to the yards per attempt. So all very, very good rushing teams, and three of the four of them, it's really a lot of what they do: Detroit, San Fran, and Baltimore. Kansas City being the only one that really passes a whole lot. So looking at Baltimore versus Kansas City, obviously two teams who really do some things different, although once again both of them do have very good rushing attacks. The main difference here is just going to be that Baltimore's the more well-rounded offense for sure. They ranked third in the league for rushing yards per attempt, 5 yards per average. Kansas City, of these four teams, was the worst, ranked ninth on the season, 4.4 yards per average. But of course, it's not the heart and soul of what they do. They probably should have ran more this season, but they haven't. In terms of the defenses, neither one of them absolutely focuses on stuffing the run. They're both bottom third of the league type defenses when it comes to stuffing the run. Baltimore is still going to hold the edge overall here. On average, would expect them to have about 4.8 yards per attempt, whereas Kansas City should sit right around 4.4 on average when this offense meets this defense. When it comes to the yards per completion, we would also see that Baltimore is actually a more efficient passing offense, ranked fifth on the season, averaging 10.9 yards per completion, whereas Kansas City, middle of the league, actually a little bit below average, maybe right about average, 10.1 yards per reception, ranking 17th in the league. So Baltimore just, once again, all in all, a very, very potent offense, a very efficient offense. They're a beast, and their defense is great too. Ultimately, I think for Baltimore, keys to success in this game, where I think that they are the better team, would be to establish that run between Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and Lamar Jackson. You want all three of them going, hitting this team in all different ways, all different directions, and really just not letting them key in and hone in on stuffing the run, which of course that should help to open up the passing attack then if they're struggling with that alone. Meanwhile, on defense, you're going to want to prevent Mahomes from extending the drives on third and long, which means you're going to want to get him into those third and long situations, I think, first. But once you're in there, don't let him get those first downs with his feet. I think ultimately for this Baltimore defense, play calling wise, I want to be conservative. I just don't want to allow the big plays, and I want to prevent certain things from happening. One of them being those third and longs is I'll accept a big catch up the middle of the field. However, at the same time, I want my defenders playing physically against this Kansas City offense. I don't want these receivers to feel comfortable catching the ball over the middle field at any point, and I'm willing to accept a few penalties in my secondary from my secondary guys as well in this game, understanding that that's going to be part of keeping these guys uncomfortable on offense. And so between those 2-3 things, however you want to look at it, I think that's the recipe to success for Baltimore. For Kansas City, I think it's going to be a little bit more of an uphill battle, and it's just going to start with what happened last week. The Kansas City receivers actually caught some balls last week. You need to catch them again this week if you're going to have any chance of beating Baltimore. You're going to have to be hyper efficient. Baltimore's I think going to be able to drive the ball no matter what Kansas City does on defense, as long as Baltimore's not having a bad day, which can always happen. But if Baltimore's doing what Baltimore's done all season long, it's going to be really tough to keep them from driving the ball. So the other big thing that I have beyond the receivers actually catching these balls is that the defense needs to keep Baltimore from scoring 7 points on drives. So keep them to 3 points, give yourself a shot, and then I think that you do have a shot in this game. At the end of the day, I am banking on the coaching of Kansas City to keep this close, though I think that Baltimore will be in control of the game. I think it'll feel like Baltimore's winning throughout the whole thing, but you'll never feel comfortable, especially if you're a Baltimore fan, and you'll always be hopeful if you're a Kansas City fan, because at the end of the day, I have the score being 24-17, Baltimore, of course, which means I would take the under at 44.5 points, and I would take Baltimore at -4. Then, when we look at San Fran versus Detroit, once again, 4th and 5th, San Fran, Detroit in that order for the rushing yards per attempt on the season, although there is a bit of a drop-off between the two, 4.8 yards for San Francisco, Detroit 4.5, and there are several other teams that were right in that same range of 4.5. So, San Francisco does have the single best rushing player in the league, I would say, in Christian McCaffrey, and thus they do have the more dangerous rushing attack, but Detroit's not too far behind. And defensively, we are going to see that Detroit's defense is very good, 5th in the league, averaging 3.8 yards per rushing attempt, and that's going to that's going to be part of the key to success for Detroit for sure. Going to be limiting Christian McCaffrey. That is a strength of theirs. So I do think that that's going to help them, the argument for picking them in this game. On the other side of the ball, San Francisco, not a great rushing defense, 17th on the season, 4.2 yards average per carry. And the totals come to be about the same, but actually in favor of Detroit for the rushing game, 4.35 on average rushing yards compared to 4.3. We just look at those numbers. But let's see, anything in the passing attack to really... San Francisco is the most efficient team in the passing game, ranking first on the season for yards per completion at 12.9 yards. So that's huge. And Detroit's quite efficient too, ranked 9th on the season, 10.7 yards. But at the end of the day, how do you win it if you're San Francisco? You're going to want to establish that run with Christian McCaffrey. I think you don't want to get into too much of a shootout against Detroit, because then I think you're taking one of your strengths away from yourself. Not that you can't win in a shootout against Detroit, but I think that's how you lose. So you want to establish that run with McCaffrey, and you want to put Detroit into these 3rd and long situations. Don't let them establish essentially their running game against you on the other side of the ball. Get them into these situations where maybe you can get some pressure on Jared Goff, have him have a little bit of a rough day, that kind of thing. And it's going to look, I could just copy paste that, change a couple of the names, and put that as the game plan for Detroit. I'm going to word it a little bit differently, but that is pretty close to what I have. For Detroit, the X factor, I think, on defense is going to be that front 7. I know, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, huge. He can make the big splash play that, especially if San Francisco can't establish that run, we do get into some sort of shootout situation. That would be huge, having that kind of playmaker for that situation. But I think what's more important, at least to start the game, is going to be the front 7 for Detroit. They're going to be stuffing the run, and also the key to winning the game, number 2, is putting pressure on Brock Purdy. You knew when balls were going to be completed and not completed last week, not because of when it was raining the heaviest, but because of when Green Bay actually got pressure on Brock Purdy. When Green Bay got pressure on Brock Purdy, the ball was not caught. When Green Bay did not get any pressure on Brock Purdy, the ball was caught. So that's going to be a huge factor. You do those 2 things in the front 7, and Detroit's got a chance in this game. So as I alluded to, I think that both of these teams want to get their ground games going and established, and with that in mind, I'm going to take the under here at 51.5. I think there's going to be a lot of eating of the clock from these offenses, a lot of rushing in this game. And so I think to get up to 51.5, we're going to have to see some of those splash plays. These rushing offenses get shut down a little bit and forced into these 3rd and long situations, where then these offenses are going to have to be efficient on those 3rd and long situations that they don't want to be in the first place. So that's why I'm taking the under at 51.5. It just seems more likely to me in this game, though. There's a reason that the line is set that high. Very easily could go over. I don't think that Detroit has the manpower ultimately in their front 7 on defense, where I said that that's the X factor in this game, to put enough consistent pressure on Brock Purdy down in and down out. The question is, will they be able to keep the game within 8 points or not? That is the spreads, plus 7.5 for Detroit, minus 7.5 for San Francisco. And if I were to bet, I would say that they do. So I would take the Lions at plus 7.5. However, my prediction for the final score of this game is going to go a little bit against that. I'm going to say it's 28-14 for the final score in favor of San Francisco, thinking that twice San Francisco is going to end up making the big splash play against this defense, and both times either turning into a touchdown a play or 2 later, or turning into a touchdown on that play. Essentially, those 2 touchdowns being the difference in this game, otherwise just being a lot of running, long drives, and I think, a couple of drives where Detroit does not settle for a field goal and instead goes for it on 4th downs, and apparently doesn't end up getting into the end zone on those drives, most of the time at least. So that's kind of the game plan that I'm thinking, that I'm predicting so many ways that this game could go. 2 very exciting games this weekend. Super excited to see them. So I hope you are too. Let me know your predictions in the comments. That would be awesome. And enjoy football this weekend. Peace out.